And a tugboat can only save one person at a time, but a lighthouse can save everyone that pays attention to it. And so it kind of was that transition when I was building the financial planning firm of how do we set the example? Well, they don't build lighthouses where success happens. They build lighthouses upon failure.
Spirituality and capitalism belong together. Those thoughts, those feelings, that comes from something bigger than I am. And together I believe we can all grow. That's how we're going to change the world. That's how we're going to change the planet.
All right, man.
Hey, bud.
Good to have you here, buddy.
Man, I'm glad I made it to Salt Lake City to come see you, my friend.
Thank you so much for flying out and coming to do this with us. It's an honor to have you out here, and that you would take the time out of your day, your week to fly out here and come sit with us here in the studio and really capture some of the moments that we've shared together over the last 3 years.
Yeah, man.
So,
Sure.
so I'm sitting here right now with Chris Robinette. Chris Robinette owns a firm in Tennessee, and he's the founder of it, and that is Lighthouse Financial Planning.
Yes, sir.
So, Chris and I, we have a very interesting relationship.
Yeah, we do.
A beautiful relationship, but one that I think is not what you would typically have in most business relationships. And these are the relationships I love, and without them, I think life is kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't mind, I would love to kind of go back in history a little bit.
Let's do it.
And talk about how you and I met. If I recall, I got a phone call from our owner at the time, and well, he's still the owner, but I'm saying at the time of when this happened.
Yeah.
And he's my business partner, and he said, "Hey, listen, we're going to go to this event with Taylor Welch, and it was like a financial kind of planning event, or how to like manage your assets."
Yeah, it was
with
like an
real estate.
asset protection workshop.
Right.
I think that he was putting on. Yeah.
Yep. And then I believe you were up there speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And that night we went out, and I believe everybody went out and had cigars or whatever. And I don't really smoke cigars, but so I don't really even drink a whole lot. And so I was there enjoying myself. We got to know each other a little bit. And then the next day I was in the event that Taylor had put on,
Yeah.
which was probably, I don't know, 50 to 100 people. And I walked out into the lobby, and then you were sitting out there on your phone, because I was like, I've kind of heard a lot of stuff. I just, whatever. And so I sat next to you, and we started talking about, financial planning. Yeah. Versus, like a financial advisor, which is very different, which I'll have you share shortly here.
Sure.
But I would love for you to recall the conversation we had with the audience.
Yeah. So, I was sitting out there checking emails because, Taylor's big quarterly events are amazing, but I don't do a lot in the online advertising space and stuff like that.
Neither do I.
A lot of those classes were cool, but it wasn't very helpful for me. And so you and I were kind of sitting out there, and you were picking my brain a little bit on like, why should our company hire you? There's 3 of us. Like, what do we do? When's the last time you've ever done anything outside of, the normal things in life? And I'm like, what do you mean outside the normal things in life? So I distinctly remember, because you were basically like, listen, we're doing really well. There's going to be assets that we need to take care of, but I need to be able to trust the people I work with. And so it was kind of funny, because you were like, so have you ever done ayahuasca? I'm like, nope. And you were like, cool, well, you're if you're gonna be my guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sure. Let's go do that.
Because you had no idea what you're gonna get
And
into.
then I tried to duck it.
Yeah, you did.
I was like,
yeah, you did. Let's go into that a little bit. One of the things over the course of that year, we'd go back and forth, and we ended up working together. You came in, you started working with our company, you started a lot of conversations with our staff and so on, and really teaching them a lot about finances and teaching them like what they should be doing. Some sales guys, what you should be doing if you're bringing these commissions, and how to set up yourself for a long term versus, or how to set yourself up long term versus just a short, stint of make the money, blow the money. You know what I mean? Pay Uncle Sam a ton of cash. Like, you were really helping them with that. But I kept saying to you, I'm like, hey man, when are we gonna go do this? And you're like, well, I got to go with the kids to Disneyland, and I got to do this, and I got to do that.
I remember you called me.
Yeah.
It was like in July or something like that. And you're like, hey, we're thinking about putting on an event in January. What's your January 7th through the 14th look like? And I was like, oh, let me look at my calendar. I was like, I'm wide open. You're like, cool, lock it in. Call this lady. You're going to Costa Rica. And I was like, I guess I'm going to Costa Rica.
Yeah. Yeah. You said, okay, I'm going to go to Costa Rica. I've got the time. And I mean, I would think inside when we started having these conversations about ayahuasca, and for those people that don't know, ayahuasca is a plant that comes from the jungles that the medicine men serve. You can do a lot of research on it, but really what it's doing is it's breaking things down to where you can get back to where you really lost that level of innocence in your life and reconnect with who you are and what your mission is on this earth. And as they say, heal your heart.
Yeah.
And so coming from a very different place and letting go of the ego and letting go of all the traumas. And this work is work. I mean, this is not.
It was not a vacation.
No, it's a lot of work. And most people don't know what they're getting into when they go into that. But Robinette, he decided that he was going to do this. Now, what's interesting is before we get to Costa Rica, Robinette decides that he's going to have an event in Mexico.
Yeah.
Actually, I was down in Mexico at that time. And I remember saying, okay, yeah, I'll stop by and come to your event. And so I went to the event. And Robinette used to call ayahuasca, what'd you call it? What was the name you called it?
I don't remember.
Oh, it was like the most redneck name possible.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely Wasque.
It was something like that. Yeah. So here we are. Robinette's putting on this event. He's bringing in all of basically his clients. They're coming down to hang out in Mexico in Cancun, I believe.
Well, yeah, just south of Playa del Carmen.
That's right. So we get there at this hotel, and the night I show up, Robinette, let's just say, has been drinking a couple.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And that night, one of the things I love about Robinette is that he is brilliant. And when I say that, like, he's just a really smart guy. And one of the things he did, what a lot of people don't know, is that he served in the military, in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And that night we shared some really personal stories about some of the things he was going through in his heart and some experiences he's had. Now, what I notice about a lot of men is that sometimes it takes us to have one too many, and we start to share and we start to open up emotionally, and we just really go through things together.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it takes a lot of people to have to break down to that level to open up to that level with other men. But that night you did. And so we had a conversation about some of the things that you had done in the military. And so you were in the Navy, correct?
Yep.
If you don't mind, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Oklahoma City, got appointed to the Naval Academy. So was in Annapolis, 2000 to 2004. Did honors economics was my degree path coming out of the academy. And then went to Pearl Harbor, guided missile cruiser. So did electronic maintenance officer and then anti-submarine warfare. One of 3 officers of the deck that we had when we deployed to Iraq. So that was pretty awesome. Knowing it's me, the navigator, and the chief navigator were the only ones really that fought the ship the whole time we were in Iraq, which was pretty awesome. And then went and got nuclear engineering degree in Charleston, built the Bush aircraft carrier. Number 2 reactor plant was our child. So commissioned her in 2009, then went to the University of Oklahoma, taught ROTC for a little while, got my MBA, and then got out of the Navy, moved to Nashville, started financial planning, and been there the last 12 years now.
And what I love first and foremost that you served in the military and that all the things that you went through to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But also what I see a lot too is that the military in general and life in general creates a lot of trauma. There's a lot of things that happen. You're putting your life at risk all the time. I mean, you definitely put your life at risk. You did a lot of different things that I would say that most people, if they were to look back on, they're like, wow, I can't believe I did that, or I went through that, or I had to do these things for our country to protect our country.
Yeah.
Which is not anything I'm going to ask you even to discuss. But with going through all those things and having those types of traumas, the next day we're sitting there in a pool with a bunch of people, right? And everybody's drinking, having a great time, doing their thing. And here comes me, right? And not that I'm better than anybody else. I just had my own experiences. And before this, I'd done a lot of my own personal work to realize that I was covering up a lot of my own traumas. I was covering up a lot of things with alcohol. I was trying to connect with people or lower my vibration so that I can connect with people that had lower vibrations. And when I say that, it's because we're just pushing things down constantly. We're trying to connect with each other. And that's all human beings want. They want to be loved. They want to be accepted and so forth. So here I am. I get in the pool with you guys. And everybody's having a great time, drinking. They're like, hey, Dalton, why are you not going to drink? I'm like, I'm good, man. And like, people just kind of keep pushing a little bit more. And I'm like, man, I'm good. And then I remember someone saying, no, why are you drinking? And I was like, because I'm training. I'm like, what are you training for? Because, you know, we got Nate in there. Nate's in great shape, and we'll talk about that in a second. And we got a lot of guys in there that are they train hard. I mean, they're very dedicated to their business, to their families, to their physical fitness. And I looked at them all. I remember looking at all of you guys and saying, I'm training for life.
Yep.
And everybody just kind of stops for 1 second there.
Damn.
And they're like, wait,
Mic
what?
drop.
And then Robinette says, he goes, yeah, we're going to go do some ayahuasca. And then they look at us and they go like, what is that? And I said, well, you know, we started talking about how this is a plant and what happens, and we made this agreement. And I said, you know, what'd be amazing to me is that we could just connect as men, and we could come together and we could just have a conversation. By next year, when we do this again, that no one's drinking, that we're actually trying different things and enjoying things, and we're not coming all the way down to Mexico to escape, but we're coming down here to connect.
Yeah.
And there's a few people that heard that. And Nate was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, and Mike.
Yep. And Mike.
So
they both signed up that weekend to go to Costa Rica.
They just signed up. And so one of the things I love about life in general, so many people think that we need to bang people against the head to believe something. Yeah. I'll believe it my way, do it this way. It has to be that way. But the best way to get people to shift and change in life, in my personal experience, is just to live by example.
Mm.
That's it.
You mean to be the lighthouse?
To be the lighthouse. There you go. We'll drop that right there. But to be the lighthouse, to live by example. So before we get into what your mission is and what you do in this life and so on. So here we are, we get to Costa Rica finally, right?
Yeah.
How are you feeling when we get to Costa Rica? Like, what were you thinking?
Oh, buddy.
But you kind of thought this was, and Mike did too. You guys kind of thought this was like a resort, kind of like, oh, this is going to be fun, you know, good food.
So what's funny is because Mike couldn't get a Saturday flight in. So I actually flew to Miami to stay with him Saturday night. And then we both flew in Sunday morning. And so by the time we got there, orientation had started, which we had missed by the time we finally got the ride from the airport and everything down there. So we walked right into active breathing on the first night.
Oh, you walked in breath work that night.
And I've never done breath work ever, you know, other than, you know, a couple of times in like a yoga class or whatever. And this was completely different than any yoga class I've ever been in. And
yep.
And like I was getting like high on oxygen. I was like, I've never pulled this much oxygen in my life. Like, you know, so I was already kind of diving in. I was like, I don't know what we got ourselves into. So I was telling Mike, I was like, oh, I don't know about this. This is pretty intense. And then, you know, the very first night that we actually did medicine, the next morning, Mike and I are both, because we end up sharing a room together. And we're both like, so how do we get out of here? It was that. Yeah. It was like, it was so intense that first night, really like having to start dealing and like just allowing yourself to open up. And, you know, like even me, my hardest thing I dealt with was like, what intentions do I actually have? You know, and you and Sean were amazing, like trying to coach through on like, just stay broad, stay focused on something, like know why you're here, be in the moment, stop trying to press it to happen, just enjoy.
Yeah.
And,
well, I mean, I would say for you that you like to control things like everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Like everybody. You think that you can outsmart everything. You like to control things.
Mm-hmm.
And like most human beings. But then when you sit down with that medicine, you find out that you're not in control.
Nope.
That you get to just lean back. And the place that we went to was Rhythmia, which is in Costa Rica. And they give you intentions while you're down there. And the intentions they give you is the first intentions the first intention is
show me what I've become.
Show me who I become.
Yep.
The next one is merge me back with my soul at all costs. Mm-hmm. That's a big word, the all cost part. And the next one is heal my heart. And so you don't need to even have the intentions when you go down there. Robinette wanted to have his own intentions because that's just who he is, right? Like he likes to sometimes make things a little difficult.
I was going for extra credit.
Yeah, you were. And so I remember I saw you that morning because I came and saw you and I was like, hey, you got this. Mm-hmm. Just keep going. And then there was a handful of days where it was more, I'll say tough love.
Yeah.
Like I've always been very, very direct with you. And that's the relationship we have. We talk direct. You talk to me direct about finances. I talk to you direct about spirituality and about where we are as human beings and where we're going. Because I think often is when we look at business, when we look at these things, we have these transactions, right? There's transactions of you give me this, I give you that, you give me this, I give you that. And it's very conditional. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's really important that those are not conditional. Like they're real relationships. If we're going
Yeah.
to be doing things for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we get to have real relationships. And so when I talked to you before about trusting you with anything that I've created or my partners have created or my staff or any of those things, it was really important to me to know that you knew exactly what I was talking about trust
Yeah.
and exactly where we were going in life, because business sometimes is much bigger than what we give it credit for. Most of the time I've seen that sometimes our journeys are much bigger than what we give them credit for. So here you are, the first day, you guys are trying to get out of there, not realizing how big what you're about to walk through is.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going.
What's funny, teaser alert, by the last day, I was like, how quickly can I come back? So
Yeah.
over the course of the week, it definitely shifted in my mind and everything. But yeah, I distinctly remember it was me, you, Nate, and Sean were sitting there having breakfast the next day. And it was just, talking to Nate, talking to both of you guys, and just, just absorbing and being, finally just present.
Yeah.
That I started to feel like this sense of like calm and just like, hey, you don't got to know everything. Just live in your 3-foot world again. Focus on the now and enjoy what you're feeling and allow what to become will become.
True.
And I was so much more at ease when I went in the second night, because I was like almost like upbeat and chipper, because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And the first night I was so like, all right, here's what I want to happen. Here's where this is going to go. This is what it's doing. And by the second night, I was like, this is going to be what it is. And then, halfway through the second night, at Rhythmia, they call it having your miracle.
Yeah.
But I would say halfway through the second night, I feel like I had mine, because I just hit like a transition point where I realized like where I'd become has become alone, because I'd been trying to do so much for so many others that I've drained the entire emotional tank of taking care of myself. And so because of that, I've started pushing all kinds of people away. And so my whole second night was like, how do I start pulling that back together? How do I start, becoming a giver of light to other people? And, I even walked around and I was telling some people, I was like, yeah, you're like a light bringer. Like you're bringing light to people. I'm so excited for you. And I went outside that second night and it was the most vivid sky I've ever seen and the brightest stars, because the moon was, it was like a new moon, and it was just absolutely perfect outside. And then when we settled into the next morning in yoga, I was like doing yoga poses I had never done before. Like I was like, oh, I'm super stretchy all of a sudden. Like I'm so relaxed. Like what's going on here? And we had just gone to bed at like 2:30, and here we are doing sunrise yoga at 7 a.m. And like I was the most just at peace that I'd been in. I mean, probably since my mom had passed away 18 years prior to that.
Wow.
And I didn't even realize just how much we carry on a day-to-day basis that you can put down. And it wasn't really until you, like you were saying, deep conversations. It wasn't really until we had some even more deep conversations about like, why do you feel like you have to carry this all the time? You don't. Just put it down. Just put it down. And so I think it was giving myself permission to finally say it's okay. You don't have to carry everyone else's water for them. You don't have to chop wood for every other person. You just have to become the example for people to watch, and they want to rise up to that energy you're putting out. And so, as we continued through night 3 and night 4, that became so crystallized that after night 4, I rewrote the core values for my company. And I didn't know exactly what they were going to be, but I changed them all, because I was like, nope, this is actually not what we are. We're this instead.
And you changed your whole business. I wouldn't say whole business, but you changed a lot of your business, where it was going, how it was working, all those things. And, you and I had been working together in different ways for a long, like well before that point in time, about spirituality and personal development and a bunch of things that you and I have conversations with quite often.
Yeah.
And then you end up going to Rhythmia and you went through your experiences, you rewrote things, but you were also, I would say, since you said yes to me, you were in training since the moment you said yes, which is beautiful. But how, so how's things shifted for you since then? Because, this whole concept here is what we're doing is we're merging business, which business is beautiful, but business is I would say it's one of the most intense personal development trainings you'll ever put yourself onto.
For sure.
Because it's not just about you, it's about your employees, it's about your clients, it's about, your community, and you do a lot of stuff this way, especially with, all of the stuff you do with your nonprofits and all the stuff you guys are doing that way. But how has things shifted? Like, how have you been able to merge this spirituality side of that you have found? And when I say spirituality, I don't mean church. I don't mean any of these things. I'm just saying your internal feelings or this internal whisper. But how's things changed for you and your business since then? I mean, this has been close to a year now.
Yeah. So what's actually kind of funny is I went and made a second company to start focusing on stuff that's in the non-financial planning world.
Okay.
Coming from the Naval Academy, coming from being an officer in the Navy, coming from being a nuclear engineer, I could have done mergers and acquisitions on Wall Street. And I was like, I want to go do personal financial planning to help families and then start creating generational wealth. But then I realized, I was like, there's so much more out there than just generational wealth. There's generational impact. What is it that you can start showing people how to do on the education side and on the leadership side and on just opening their minds to so many more things that my good friend Lance Welch, who's actually Taylor's dad, him and I are hosting a retreat for the first time next year that literally talks about what's the values, principles, and knowledge that you should be passing down. Because without values, principles, and knowledge, the wealth will just go away. So if you don't teach others like how you did the things you did, no matter how tightly controlled you are, they're never going to be able to generate and create wealth. And so because of that, the leadership side, and Nate with like the Unleash the Leader Within stuff that we've been doing, it's allowed me a lot more opportunity to find these entrepreneurs and really start coaching and pouring into them. That's not just numbers, but it's more like relational. It's more like, where do you really want to go? Why do you not have a clear vision? And by finding that a clear vision that they really want to chase after and allowing it to open up their horizon, not only do they start making more money, but they start living in their purpose. And one of the things that I do, like when you mentioned the nonprofit, veteran suicide awareness is a big thing that we do a lot of money to support, along with anti-human trafficking stuff, because, those are probably two of the most prevalent things in America that need to be fixed.
Agreed.
Children need to be protected. Our veterans need to be taken care of. And what I've found in dealing with so many veterans, especially even friends of mine, they come home, they have a clear hierarchy of things they're doing. They had a mission. It wasn't always theirs. Someone brought it down to them, and then they just went and did what they were told to do and run. And then a lot of them, when they come home, they don't have that clarity. They don't have those orders and that purpose anymore. So now they're like, well, what am I supposed to do today? And so they start kind of coming up with, well, I probably need to get dressed and I probably should go out and do stuff. And I guess I'll hang out at a coffee shop. And if they don't dig into that strong community of other veterans that are like, hey, man, here's kind of how that transition to civilian life went. Hey, here's kind of a company we can get you involved in so you have that brotherhood again. So many of them feel like they're on an island.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I felt that way, especially the first couple of years coming out of the Navy, because I'd just gotten divorced. My kids moved 3 states away. I moved to Nashville. I didn't know anybody. And every night was like, how much can I go drink and who can I meet? Because I don't want to be at home alone. What am I going to do? So next thing I know, I was networking 4 or 5 nights a week, meeting everyone I could in Nashville, but we weren't networking by hiking. we were networking at the bar at the Palm.
Why do you think that men, like, let's just use men, because I think that's really prominent, right? I don't think you don't really hear a whole lot of women like, I just went out tonight to go network. And so I just did, I just drank 3 or 4 things of whiskey and all that. Why do you think it's so prominent, like in the military? Why do you think it's so prominent around men? Like, and I hate to just kind of and I'm not trying to twist things too far away.
For sure.
But alcohol seems to be something that ties our culture together in a way that is I mean, I can see how it connects, but eventually that connection becomes destructive.
Because it's an easy release. I mean, you gotta realize, the neocortex in our brain runs all of our logical thinking, and it runs our memory, and it runs a lot of other stuff. But until you start getting those cortisol hits, the cortisol hit drives you back into your intrinsic brain and drives you back into all your training. It drives you back into all the things that you did that was muscle memory.
Right.
So the problem a lot of people, I feel like, run into is something super stresses them out. They get a cortisol hit. They don't have a quick oxytocin hit or dopamine hit to follow on the back end. Now, all of a sudden, their brain's just kind of shutting down from the logical side, and they go back into a dark place because that's what they had trained on for so long, or that's what they had experienced for so long, or that's what's just stuck in their memory. And so you revert to alcohol because you know it's going to, not instantly, but pretty quickly, deaden everything out to where you're like, I don't feel that pain anymore. And so not having a healthy relationship on how to deal with the cortisol injections from the stress, not having a healthy relationship on how to like communicate with good friends and be like, hey, here's where I'm struggling.
Right.
And I need to like figure out how to vent productively. I think that's where a lot of the problems kind of come from. And I think that's where more people are shifting and trying to kind of lead by example, like you talked about, but also showing others like a path forward by doing it and saying, hey, you don't have to do all these things.
Yep.
Like I still drink, but like when we left Costa Rica, I didn't drink for probably 4 months, 5 months. And then I was like, oh, I'll have part of a bourbon. But now, like I'll go to hockey games. I'll have 2, maybe 3 drinks throughout the entire hockey game. And I would say 2 seasons ago, because it's open bar, it could easily been 7 or 8 because you're just hanging out. You're just shooting the shit. They just keep giving you another one.
Isn't that interesting that the more successful you get, right? Whether you're in private flights, whether you're in, wherever you're at, everybody wants to just shove alcohol down your throat for free.
Yeah.
Like before you had to pay for it.
Yeah.
But now they just want to shove it down your throat for free and like numb all that stuff out. I find that all to be fascinating.
They want to dumb your reasoning factors so you're more likely to agree to something they tell you to do.
Correct. So one of the things I would say about you, Robinette, is because I know a lot about your history and your background, I would say you've been able to use your pain and you've been able to channel it into something else. I mean, even the story, or not the story, but your experience of what happened with your mom when you finally decided to get into, like basically helping people with their finances.
Yeah.
That's a place of pain. That's a place of like taking something that was traumatic and turning it into something beautiful. You coming out of the military where so many people take this pain and they turn it into something traumatic. I know I have friends of mine, they've got bullets with their names on them, right? Because of this PTSD that they're facing in their own personal lives about, is it today that I'm going to take my life or is it tomorrow I'm going to take my life? As long as I have that bullet there, I can think about it. But for you, you were able to take all of this pain and you were able to channel it into something else. How were you able to do that?
Sheer dumb luck and the grace of God. It's probably the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
Like I would say, I mean, even 2 years ago, I was still like, because we were coming in the tail end of COVID, there was a lot of shutdown in 2020. So in 21, there was still like, oh, what are we doing? Where are you at? Stay away from people. And, I started really shifting a lot in my own head. I'm like, I have to become, it's cliche, but I have to become a beacon of light to other people because I truly built the financial planning firm on the aspect of something that relates to the Navy. And then I was like, how do you show people where to go? How do you get people home safely? And, we used to always talk about tugboats versus lighthouses. And a tugboat can only save one person at a time, but a lighthouse can save everyone that pays attention to it. And so it kind of was that transition when I was building the financial planning firm of how do we set the example? Well, they don't build lighthouses where success happens. They build lighthouses upon failure. They build lighthouses where ships have sunk multiple times. And so when I was thinking about the journey, even in the financial realm, you get people with debt, you got bad cash flow, you don't have the financial understanding. And next thing you know, you're on the rocks of life and you're trying to figure it all out. And you start building your lighthouse to start showing others in your family and your community on like, how do we relate to avoiding these main issues so that you can get back home safely. And then it naturally kind of started evolving probably the last 12 to 18 months when you and I were talking. I was like, well, what else are people wrecking? Because it's not just finances, it's personal relationships. It's, girlfriends and wives. And how do we deal with our children, or how do we deal with our parents? Because, there's so much generational trauma and baggage that people bring along that they just kind of suppress, that a lot of that like coaching and desire that kind of was boiling in me was, how do we start just speaking into the hearts of other people? How do we just start saying this is possible to overcome? How do we put you through physical stressors that allows your subconscious to start running and allow your mental side to realize there's so much more left in the tank for you to do, so that when you come back from said physical stressor, you're like, man, I just walked into some extreme clarity. In September, Nate did the Miami 100. And
I saw
so
that.
Mike, myself, and Joe went down to kind of like walk with him, pace him, and do stuff like that. I ended up doing 35 miles that day.
I saw that on your social media.
The
Yeah, that you did
longest,
that.
the longest stretch I did was a half marathon. And I was not in half marathon running shoes,
Right.
but I was like dialed in on like, how do we support this mission of getting him across the finish line? We ended up doing the 100 miles in less than 30 hours. I mean, he was pacing great. And towards the end, all of a sudden, all of us had a whole nother renewed wind, because all four of us did the last mile and a half together, because we're like, hey, we started this, we're going to get you through this, and we're here. And it was like such a strong amount of camaraderie and building relationship together, because there was clarity of purpose. And so I think that's where a lot of that change for me is, how do we help others that just feel like they're afloat start finding some clarity of purpose?
Yeah, and I would say I love what you just said about the tugboat and about the lighthouse. I know you've shared this with me before, but there's a different level I've heard, because I know that sometimes when I'm trying to figure out, okay, should I make this financial investment? Should I do this thing? I pick up the phone. You're always there, and I say, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. Like, what do you think about this? Give me the information, because I believe it's really important for us to surround ourselves around people that know more, right? Like you've studied so much, you put so much time and effort and energy into this. And I would say one of the other reasons that made me decide to trust you in the capacity of where you are in business is because of what happened with you when you actually finally just started to walk down this path. Do you mind sharing with people like how it is that your whole business started? Like what led you to wanting to impact people?
Yeah. So, when my mom passed away, we had a little over a $4 million estate. And my stepdad was supposed to get, $100,000 cash, a couple of rental houses, stuff like that. And back in the day, the federal limit was only $1 million before you had to start paying estate taxes. And we ended up having, 64% estate taxes on $4 million, which, is a lot. And so they had kind of coerced my sister, as I was still in the middle of the Indian Ocean driving this way. My grandparents had left the house. They were back in 24 hours back to my mom's house after she had passed away. And my stepdad had shredded a ton of financial documents, bank statements. We're like, why? Who does that? The day after your wife passes away. And it was a grief mechanism, he said. But I digress on any of that. But with that, they basically were like, hey, to avoid probate, you really should just give him a third of the estate, even though he wasn't slated for a third of the estate. But because we had done all this trust work, he wasn't actually entitled to a third of the estate, nor would it have probated that way. But with my sister being a beneficiary and a trustee, they got her to basically sign off on agreeing to give him a third of the estate. And then it put us in a situation where I had to either agree to it or I could have been removed from the trust, which sucked.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
And so, we had a golf course and my mom had bought it for him, was making about $250,000 a year profits. And so we tried to negotiate by giving him the golf course, which is where he worked and all the other stuff, but he didn't want it. So we ended up sending all the cash out. Well, now we have less than 9 months to pay $1 million tax bill. And we have no large asset except for the golf course. But you can't really sell a golf course in 9 months. It just doesn't happen. So the $1.3 million golf course ended up selling for just under $1 million. We got a little tax savings because it sold for less than what it was, but we were asset rich and cash poor. And coming out of the Navy, when I was thinking mergers and acquisitions, corporate world, I just kept feeling called to like, no, I want to go help people not experience what my 19-year-old sister and 23-year-old me had gone through, so that they're not 12 time zones away making a $5 a minute satellite phone call trying to talk to attorneys.
Right.
And so that was really the big transition. But the first 3-4 years, it was, who can I talk to? Who can I shake hands with? Let me run your money. Let me get you some life insurance. Hey, we should talk about planning because that makes a lot of sense. That I've culminated like a whole full circle to where now everything's like, hey, let's talk about planning. And if it makes sense to do insurance or investments, cool, we'll talk about that later. But we really have to make sure your planning is right. You need to know your numbers in your business. You need to make sure you're doing good tax strategy, like set up actual estate planning and then talk to the future generations about it prior to you passing, so they know kind of what's coming and they really truly understand your wishes, and they're not left in some like purgatory of like, well, is this what they meant or did they mean something else? And that's where I think the true impact has started to arise in my own business, is because I've allowed myself to step back and not worry about making money or chasing money, but really now it's chasing impact. How do we find people that we can change the entire trajectory of their lives by just a few simple tweaks on things they just didn't know to do? And so I think that's been the ultimate shift on coming out of Costa Rica with you, was that whole first night when I was like, I'm alone. I was looking at this. It's weird to say it. It's like a 1970s neon sign in Vegas, the flashing light. And all it said was serve. That's all it said. Just flashing, serve. And it's weird because they talk about how you could get some visions or you could see things, or, you just don't know how to really process it, but just take it in and be in the moment. And that moment was like, how do I transition who I've been to who I should become by serving more people? And so I knew I wasn't going to achieve all that in the financial planning world. I knew I needed to figure out how to put out a book someday, or how to go speak to more veteran organizations, or pour back into more nonprofits and, find ways to help them raise money to start serving the purpose that they have. And it's just generated so much more even over the last 9-10 months, that you and I have just changed so much again that I'm like, it's about that time to go back.
That's what's beautiful about life, though, right? Is once we let go of who we think that we are, or our belief systems of who we think we are, all of a sudden we shift. Like I've shifted in many different ways, even just a year. Like I had certain beliefs and I was like, okay, these are my beliefs.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. This doesn't make sense anymore for who I am or where I'm going to. And so I think it's always about reinventing ourselves. Where are we going to? How are we going to be getting there? But one of the things is not doing it alone.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we are able to have these conversations, and the word serve is such a beautiful word, because I know for me in 2016, when the whole entire kratom industry was basically like, this is it. It's going to be Schedule 1 for everybody. It's over. And I lost everything. And I was already sleeping in my office at the time and all that. This whole story, which I'm not going to get into a ton of details on at the moment because this is about you.
It's about us, buddy. What are you talking about?
But at that moment in time, though, I finally just says, you know what? I don't really care if this it's always been about the impact it would make to help people.
Yeah.
But there became a point in time where I saw really how it was really helping people. And I says, I don't care anymore. I just want to help people. I just want to serve. I just want to lift up people. And yes, great. The resources will come. The blessings will come, like however you want to look at it, but there'll be an abundance there. I know that will happen, but my purpose is not just to turn around and make money. My purpose is how do we change things? And ever since you and I have known each other, I said, listen, Robinette, this is not about the money. It is about the money, of course, because I love money, but I also love what money can do. Like I feel like I really have a really healthy relationship with money. And at the same time, it's not about the money, but it's about the money, if that makes sense. So
it's about the tool
exactly
that money can do.
Because it's the impact. That's what most people miss is that, and I'm sure you probably have plenty of clients over the years that they think that once I have said number, I'm going to be said thing.
Yep.
And my life is going to be, I'm going to be happier. I'm going to be more peaceful. My life is going to be so wonderful. And from your perspective, from you dealing with a lot of different clients over the years, is that true? Does all of a sudden their life change and the world gets amazing, the lights open up and the sun comes down and now all of a sudden they're healed and changed and everything they wanted inside shifts?
Yeah. So I call this the milestone versus finish line paradox, because there's so many people when I first meet them, they're like, I just got to get to $10 million. I don't see my wife. I'm not going to see my kids. I'm not going to a single one of these basketball games because I just need to be at $10 million. And it'll fix all my problems in life. And then the $10 million comes, the kids don't want to see them. The wife is divorcing them. The business partners, raided all the coffers while they were gone last week. And I mean, there's so many stories of everything going wrong. But what happens is the $10 million comes, they wake up the next day and they're like, well, now what? And it's right back to the veterans we talked about. They had a very clearly defined purpose, $10 million. But there was no purpose for 10 million and one and beyond. So a lot of my reframe that I talk to my clients about, and it's a milestone. It's phase one. Amazing. Let's get to $10 million. I'm all about it. Let's slow down a little bit. Let's have a little work-life separation, because there is no such thing as work-life balance. Let's have a little work-life separation. Let's go to some of the sporting events. Let's take the family on the vacation. Let's enjoy the journey. But understand, when we get to $10 million, phase one, great. Now what's phase two? Now we dream bigger. Now we look at another vision that's not just tunneled on $10 million, but it's like, man, there is actually stuff after this. And there's so many athletes that I talk to that are like, I just got to go win this national championship. I just want the World Series. I just want the Stanley Cup. And then they're completely unfulfilled. The entire offseason, you watch people that have won said championship and they built their entire life around, I just need to win this thing so I'm somebody. And they don't realize they were already somebody, but they were allowing that one thing to dictate what everything was going to be in their life. And so even when we deal with like athletes and large entrepreneurs and stuff like that and start reframing them into, this is just going to be milestones. There's going to be objectives and wickets we want to occur with all the way. But once we complete all those, it's just like a video game, what's the next one? What's the next one? Because you don't ever beat the game of life until you die. Right. And that's the finish line.
That is the finish line. So
I would rather say, how many laps around the track can we have versus saying, how do I just run this the fastest I can and then not get anything out of it?
Yeah. I'm grateful that before my life changed in any financial way at all, that I went through all of the pain. I went through not having certain things I wanted. I went through the sacrifice, the hero's journey, right? Yeah. Which I think is also, more I learn about the hero's journey is just something that's kind of a little bit bullshit. We just think we have to go through these things in order to have these things, which is not true at all. It's just the way that we frame those things. But I am grateful though that I did a lot of my own personal development work, recognizing that the money would not change anything. It would just make things a little easier. Our friend, Jeremy will say that, listen, like money, it
grows on trees.
Yeah, well, he does say that, but he also says that money solves money problems.
Yep.
But it doesn't solve relationship problems.
Nope.
And so you get to that point in time where I've seen a lot of my friends, I've seen a lot of people, which is one of the reasons I'm very passionate about combining spirituality with capitalism, taking the two together and moving those things together so that people don't get to that point in time to where they're sitting in their house, they don't have their friends, they don't have their family, they're alone, they have everything they possibly can have, but yet they're miserable and they're inches away from putting a bullet in their head.
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot. And I see it a lot in entrepreneurs, and I've seen a lot in veterans, and I've seen a lot in human beings in general when they stop feeling like there's purpose to life.
Yeah.
And having those relationships. So to you, what is spirituality and capitalism? How do we merge these things together? I mean, you're living it.
Yeah.
You've done it. You know what I mean? You're using your passions, you're using your focus, you're using this vision of yours. So that's one of the things we're here to explore is how do we explore spirituality and capitalism?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's, God source, universe. Like there's so many different ways people look at it. I don't want to define it all in like you have to be in this bucket.
But you can define it for you, though. It doesn't have to be.
For me, it's like, when you look at this situation, the spirituality side is what is deeper than my why? Like, what's the why behind the why? And then why do I allow myself to actually explore it versus bearing it? Right. And so a lot of times, I was reading a book the other day and the guy was talking about his burn and what really truly drives him. And I think that burn is amazing because it lights our soul on fire and it gets us going and it pumps us up. And so it'll drive the business side. But if we have a separation between where we want to be with our ego and where we want to be with our, masculine and feminine energy, for example, and where we want to be when we're just alone with our thoughts and allowing our heart to beat and just focus on, simple meditation of gratitude that day. If you can't start finding ways that you want to be basically a shepherd for other people, I call it a Sherpa up the mountain, and it's my job to show you how to get up the mountain, but it's also my job to help you get back down the mountain safely too. We don't just get you up there and be like, good luck. And so I think a lot of people will look at the spirituality side of things as like, I just got to get to this thing and then good luck. But you got to kind of get to it and then go through it so that you can kind of come back down and then spread what you've learned to other people. Because you can learn enough by watching other people do it. You can learn even more by telling other people. But you can really learn when you start digesting it and teaching others on like your own experience. And it makes a whole new level of just like, I think, awareness. And so many people in our society live on Zoom. They live with AI. I mean, hell, everybody dates online now, like organic dating is kind of hard. Like you go hang out at the girl's house and they're like, cool. Well, I got 800 people I got to swipe through. So you got 22 minutes. I'm like, bye.
Exactly.
And so I take that spirituality side as the relationship and then how much you're willing to open up and put people in your bubble. Or do you have a really large bubble and hold people away? And I think the merging of that spiritual, with the capitalism is so much so, how can my business help your business grow? Whether or not it helps my business. Like, how do I have some altruistic nature inside of what I'm doing that gives you the leg up to become the best version of who you are without me going, cool, now where's mine? Because it just goes right back to that clarity. And there's just so many people that don't have it because they're always like, what's in it for me? And there's not enough people are what's in it for them.
Right. So how do you apply that then into your company right now? With Lighthouse?
Yeah. So for me, it's been, man, that's a tough one. It's hard to explain because it's just kind of like, it feels like it's ingrained now. We rewrote our core values to be serve. So stability, expertise, reliable communication, vision, and empathy. Whereas our core values used to be some form of like grit and determination. But really I was like, how do I take serve and give back to clients? Like, how do we have proactive communication and reliable expectations while leveraging expertise and creating stability into their lives without what used to be, how do we chase rate of return and make you all this money? But then the problem is you go chase rate of return and then you miss, and a high frequency trader just cuts your legs out underneath you. Next thing you know, you drop 15% on accident. And then you got to go explain, hey, we did everything right for 15 years, but this one thing completely ruined everything.
And then ruins your legacy completely at that point.
And then where's your impact?
Right.
And so I think that's been the major shift is coaching financial planners, not necessarily even Lighthouse planners, but other planners all around the country on like, how do you start talking about 7 generations of impact? How do you start showing people how to truly pull all their stuff together to that values, principles, and knowledge that we talked about earlier? And then from a place of love, actually teach your children how you did it. Because so many people are afraid that like, you're going to lose it all if I give you the reins. But it's that finish line versus milestone again. If you don't start teaching them how you did it, how are they ever going to step in and eventually take the reins and steward all this really well?
I like what you said because, you know, money is energy. Just simply is energy. And with money being energy, and you have all of these financial advisors / financial planners, if they're all looking at all of this as a legacy and they're looking at this long term, I think Warren Buffett said the investments we make today is not for us, but for our future generations. Then the question is, as you're leading this, I'll call it revolution, into looking differently, into doing things differently, right? Instead of just chasing rate of return. If that's the case, then it's teaching all these financial advisors and financial planners to start to see things from perspective of, okay, now you got your client. In order to keep your client so that they're making an impact, what is it they want to create an impact with?
Yep.
Like, it's not he who dies with the most toys wins. It's he who makes the most impact. And one day we're going to not be here anymore. Our bodies are going to be, you know, just basically of ashes or dust, and our souls or our essence will live on into whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be our generations here. There's still going to be other things going on here. And so it's like, if we can lay those foundations now, if we can let our future generations know what we want and how we want it to be, to help lead them with values, with focus, you know, that's what counts. And that's what I'm hearing you say that you're doing, that you're saying, okay, listen, I'm going to take this group of people over here. I'm going to teach them a few things so that then they can bring that on to their clients. And I think if the whole world starts doing these things in all kinds of different industries, we'll start kind of seeing things from a perspective of not what we can get, but what we can give. We see how we can impact versus how we can take. It all shifts because there's plenty to go around.
There's more than enough.
There's a lot going around. So it's like, why not put those types of things into your business? And I can say what I love about our conversation we're having now, understanding a little bit more about what happened to you in Costa Rica, already knowing what led up to that moment in time. You took an integration meaning that you took the messages that you got from your experience from the medicine, you know, from ayahuasca, and you said, okay, listen, I see this blinking light. It's flashing, right? And I'm going to take this and then I'm going to change everything about my business without changing anything about my business. I'm going to change where I'm headed to, and I'm going to create a bigger impact that's going to have a more long-term, I hate to use the word impact again, but it has a larger impact that's not just for my current client, but for their 7 generations ahead of them, and to think about long-term versus short-term. And then eventually that's how you really create those changes. So are you particular then about the people you choose to work with because of that?
Yeah, to an extent. You know, it used to be selling my services to everybody, selling my service, you know, let me convince you on why I'm everyone you need to be.
And that's how you were when I met you.
And I feel like I've become a lot more of a buyer now. You know, I want 30-year clients that turn into 30-year friendships. Like, you know, I want them to invite me out on the yacht. I want them to invite me to the wedding. I want them to invite me to the birthday party, you know? And so I want to work with the people that value the knowledge and the conversations and have a much deeper purpose of where they want to go, and not just, hey man, give me $100 million or you're fired. You know, when you buy on the price, you die on the price, you know, the same with rate of return. So to me, it used to be selling and trying to convince other people that I'm good enough. But again, because of ayahuasca, I know I'm good enough for the right people.
Right.
And so now it's finding the right people who want to think I'm good enough and want to walk down that path with me and with our team. And so my whole goal is adding, you know, 3 more planners this year and coming into 24, just so we can share the workload even more. And we can help increase our company's impact to more businesses and families out there, so that I can keep teaching and I can focus on training these planners on how to be the best version of themselves and providing leadership and providing guidance. That's not just, hey, we're pouring over investment documents all day. Like, let's pour over how you're discussing life with your clients. How are you helping them understand that paying off this debt could be monumental to their cash flow, which could all of a sudden create a freedom that they've never felt from a stress that they've always had because you showed them how to build a war chest for the first time.
Right.
And they got 20,000 in the bank that they've never done before because of a few tweaks and adjustments. And like, I'm not one that's ever going to put an adult on a budget. Like, I'll build some guardrails, but most of what it is finding decision fatigue. You know, we all got 30 to 35 things going in our head at any given time. And so what I try to train people on is how to find the 3 to 5 things that you can accomplish in the next 12 months to build and grow the legacy you're truly wanting to create. So you can say, these are the milestones for this year. Let's just work on checking them off. And then we'll worry about new milestones next year. And because you watch relief wash over people's face, you watch their shoulders drop, because half these people I talk to don't even know their numbers. Like, they have an idea what their revenue is. They know how much they spent. They don't know if it's profit. They don't know if the company did it. And so it's been able to take that step back and say, hey, let's truly plan for you before we worry about any investments. I mean, I have some clients, unfortunately, that came out of medical school with $700,000-$800,000 of combined student loan debt. We're not saving $1 right now because we have 7, 8, 9% student loans we got to pay off. And so we're freeing up their future by attacking the debt. And every $1,000 of debt we pay off is interest they'll never pay again, which to me is a much better foundational footing than it is to throw money in the stock market and hope, well, let's hope we outpace this because I'll get you 12 to 15%, but then what happens when you don't? And so you don't make money paying off debt. And so that's why so many advisors are like, we just got to save and we got to build your retirement accounts and we got to do all this other stuff. But really, you can change a client's life by slowing down on investing money and making sure it's going to all the right places first so that their foundation is strong. Because to build a skyscraper, you got to go really deep in building a very strong foundation versus building a 2-story house. You don't need a very big foundation. So depending on where your clients are going really depends on how much work you need to let them put in first. And I think on that leadership side and that coaching side of where I'm going is allowing people the understanding of you don't have to have it all today. We just have to start working and getting the pieces aligned, because so many people look at the highlight reel of social media and say, well, this guy's got everything. Well, I know a lot of those guys. They rented it.
Yeah, they
borrowed it. They didn't do it, or they're leveraged to the hilt.
Yep.
And I see people, even over the last 5 years, who tortoise versus hare. These guys have been going a lot slower, but they've been building the foundation. And now there's a little bit of setback in the economy and people are talking recession and things like that. And these guys are in super position of strength because they have cash. They have a war chest. They paid down debts and they're not way over leveraged. Now they're struggling.
Right. Yep. That's one of the things I love about working with you, by the way, is that you care. Like, you care. Like, you know about my family. You know about what my desires are. You know about the things I want to accomplish. You know about where I'm going. You're very clear on that vision, and you'll be like, hey, Dalton, is this in your vision? Is this bringing you where you want to go? Like, that's a great idea, but is that for the long term? Like, you know, you're always challenging those things, and you're never telling me what to do, but you're giving me a perspective of things that I sometimes don't think about. And so I think if someone is looking for someone that can help them with financial planning, that your guys' company is great that way, because at least with our relationship, I know that you know me, you know my family, you've walked the talk, you've walked through the fire. We've done personal development trainings together.
We did walk fire too.
We did walk fire together. We've coached we've coached men together and helped walk them through those, through the fire, literally through the fire. So doing some fire walks with Robinette, which was incredible, with a guy where's Dave out of?
Dave's out of Virginia.
Virginia, yeah. So this is the same gentleman that did all of Tony Robbins. Yeah.
Almost 30 years.
It's incredible. What an amazing man. So before we end up going, this is a question I have for you, and that is tomorrow morning. Like, we all have to look at our legacy, but we also have to look at our mortality. And that is tomorrow morning, you don't make it, right?
Yeah.
Your kids look back at you, your friends look back, and your employees look back at you. What do you want to be remembered for? Like, your legacy on this earth, because we're not here very long. It feels like we are, but all of a sudden it's over.
You never know.
Lights out.
I mean, we might not de-ice our plane in the morning and it could go catastrophically wrong.
It's true.
We just never know.
It's true.
I think for me, I don't think I want to be remembered as like feeling like I had a tough upbringing. I don't want to be remembered as like troubled things that I just held on to and didn't know how to work through and things like that. To me, I think the true legacy would come from just what I've learned, and what I've constantly tried to do is continuously grow. And there's so much more that I want to do out there. But if it all stopped tomorrow morning, I think I would want to look back and have all these people talk about how much I loved pouring into other people, how much I wanted to watch people grow and become the best version of themselves, and the sacrifices I was willing to make to show people a path, even if it slowed down what I was actually doing, because it generated so much more of that impact that we talked about. Because truly, at the end of the day, if people know that I was constantly trying to grow and that I basically was just a nobody, I'm just that Sherpa that wants to help you get up the mountain and come back down. But really, the vision that you're going to create in your life is your own, and it's not me pushing you into any one area. Then my kids will have a slate to do so many things out there without me really driving them to do it. And if they'd shared that with my grandkids, who I will never meet, or my great grandkids, I'm like, here's what the Robinette Family Foundation ended up creating, or here's where the Robinette family name went, because you're perpetually learning and you're giving back and you're just allowing it to be. I think that'd be amazing.
I love it. And way to do the work for your kids. Way to do the work so that you can connect more with them. Way to do the work so that you can continue to bring this legacy and continue to bring like this lighthouse. And again, going back to the lighthouse, I love that. Like, I love the fact of you being aware enough, just because I know your mind so well that you're like, look, because I always hear lighthouse saying that the lighthouse is so that you know where to go. Not remembering the lighthouse was put there because there was danger ahead of time. And so many of us in finances, there's so much dangers there. And there's nobody there to like lead us, to be able to show us where to go to. Because, I know for myself, I've done plenty of dumb things in my life in 43 years, and bad investments, bad decisions, business decisions. And I always say, in order to be able to make an omelet, you got to crack a few eggs. So Lord knows I've cracked a lot of eggs. But still have a beautiful omelet. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy about that. And I'm just the idea that I can have you here and be able to share these conversations with people. But I appreciate you following your inner light, your wisdom, your knowing, to be able to like say, hey, listen, I'm going to take something that was tragic that happened to our family. I'm going to take a place where this random guy comes in and tells me that, hey, if you're going to work with me, this is what you're going to do. And you keep your word and you follow through with it. Many people have told me they're going to do something and they don't do it.
Yeah.
So for you to be able to do that, you're a lighthouse that way, right? To be able to show I walk with my own integrity and walking in that path, to be able to show people the way that way. And now you have your foundation you're building. You've got everything you're doing right now with, sounds like you're going to have a book coming out.
Maybe,
huh?
We'll see how writing that goes.
I love that. I love to hear that.
ChatGPT may write it for me. We're going to find out.
Hey, you know what? We got to use the tools that we have, right?
That's right.
That's the key to it all.
AI is big,
We could go, that could be that's another conversation.
That's our next call.
That's not today though. So, so for those people that say, hey, listen, you know what? I love what you're about. Like, not just about, hey, you're going to help me with my finances, but I would love to have someone that I could connect with, somebody that could help me figure out what my legacy is going to be, how to make sure that my money is working for me over long periods of time. I want to build a relationship with someone like yourself. What's the easiest way that they can find you, they can connect with you, and learn all about what it is that you're about?
So apparently there's like 18 Chris Robinettes in the nation, as I've learned thanks to my Google alerts. I have run a marathon according to Facebook this year, but it wasn't me. Finding me on Facebook, Instagram, just Chris Robinette 04. You can always email me, Chris at crco.com. There you go. Chris at crco.com. Super easy. I always check my emails. Hop on a phone call, grab a Zoom, jam one day. Financial planning's up there. You can find us, lhplanning.com as our financial planning company. And pour into Dalton's social media, give him a follow. And then you can always find me from his place too. So
Yeah, definitely can find me that way too. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you so much coming out today, sharing your heart, sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge. Really excited to see where you're going to be taking your own personal brand and how you're going to be impacting vets, the youth, financial planners, people that really are looking for that lighthouse. So I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me out. Thanks for everything.
All right, man. Cheers.